The fluorescent office lights flickered overhead like they were mocking me. I gripped the sides of the podium tighter, the numbers on the slide blurring, blending into a nightmare with no exit. I could hear my own voice trembling across the room, filled with eager faces. As you can see in the fourth quarter financial report, this is your moment, Sophie, I whispered to myself, pushing through the panic. The words sounded hollow in the dizziness, everything spun, the charts turning into distorted streaks of color. I felt my heart no longer beating in rhythm. It was as if it wanted to tear through my chest and escape. I'm Sophie Bennett, Chief Operating Officer of a major tech corporation in Seattle, Washington, 40 years old, and I was dying in the middle of the highest point of my career. A voice called from the back of the room. Sophie, are you okay? You're falling apart, a colleague shouted, their tones sharp with alarm. I opened my mouth to respond, but no sound came out. The room suddenly tilted to the left. It felt like I was floating in space before everything went dark. Chaotic voices erupted. Call 911. She's not breathing. Clear the room. My assistant, Lisa's terrified face appeared above me, her mascara running down her cheeks in 2 black streaks. Sophie, stay with us. The ambulance is coming. Don't leave me, Sophie, she cried, her voice breaking with fear. I tried to lift my hand, but my body felt like stone. I whispered, barely a moan. Call my parents, please. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, there was only one sensation left in my body: freezing cold. Urgent medical voices surrounded me. Unfamiliar medical voices surrounded me. Unfamiliar medical terms like cardiac arrest and emergency surgery sliced into my ears like sharp. I clung to the wrist of a nurse, my vision as dim as a curtain not fully drawn. My phone, I need to call my family. They won't care, I thought, dread gripping my chest. She hesitated for a moment, then placed the cold phone in my hand. I dialed my mother straight to voicemail. I tried my father. Nothing. The messages I sent became a frantic blur, shaky, desperate words. Mom, I'm at the hospital. They're prepping for surgery. Dad, please pick up. I'm so scared. Finally, the nurse gently took the phone from my hand. We need to go now, Miss Bennett. I'm sure they'll be here when you wake up. They abandoned me, I murmured, my voice barely audible. But they didn't come. I woke up after surgery, lying silently in the ICU. The steady beeping from the heart monitor played a dull, lonely tune. Lisa had left a note on my bedside table saying she'd return in the morning, but the hospital only allowed immediate family after visiting hours. Family? What a joke. At 2:00 a.m., your mother left a voicemail, she said gently. Would you like to hear it? I nodded, a faint hope flickering in my aching chest. My mother's voice came through as cold as ice. Sophie, we got your messages, but your dad and I can't come right now. Chloe's having a meltdown over the design they chose for her new office. You know how sensitive she is. If she feels better tomorrow, we'll stop by. You lost worth our time. Her tone implied, cutting deeper than any knife. I turned away, tears sliding down my face. The nurse looked at me with pity. Would you like me to call someone else for you? I wiped my tears with the back of my hand. My mind flashed back to last Thanksgiving when I'd quietly paid off Chloe's $65,000, 0 cents credit card debt. My mother hadn't even looked up from Chloe's new designer purse. Sophie, you're such a good daughter. Good enough to be left alone in this cold hospital. I inhaled deeply. Could you hand me my phone, please? I need to call my lawyer. The nurse looked surprised, but handed me the phone. My fingers no longer trembled as I dialed. Ethan, it's me. Come here now. Bring all the documents I asked you to prepare. I'm in the ICU. And no, my family isn't here. That's exactly why I'm calling. They've betrayed me for the last time, I said, my voice firm with resolve. I stared at the ceiling. The heart monitor beeped slowly, but now its rhythm was unfamiliar, resolute. I thought I was used to my family's coldness, but that night in the empty ICU, I realized I was wrong. I had never gotten used to it. I had only tried to. My phone buzzed at 3. I hesitated for a few seconds, then pressed play, clinging to a foolish shred of hope. Sophie, it's Mom. I just talked to Chloe. She's really upset. The navy blue design in the office made her cry all night. You know how sensitive she is. I know you're not feeling great, but our family is going through a tough time. We'll try to stop by tomorrow if things settle down. Rest well, love you. I froze. It wasn't the voice of a mother worried about her daughter who had just undergone heart surgery. It was a tone filled with pity for Chloe, my 28-year-old little sister, who was distraught over a design choice. I let out a dry, hollow laugh, sounding like something inside me finally cracked. Lisa returned in the early morning, quietly, placing a coffee cup on my bedside table without saying much. Maybe she knew there were no words that could patch the emptiness inside me right now. "I have another message from your mother," Lisa whispered. "It's just more lies," I said bitterly, waving it away. I didn't bother reading it. I knew it would just be the same shallow words. The hospital now felt like a cheap theater after a bad play. Only me and the soulless machines remaining. I remembered last Thanksgiving writing a $70,000 0 cents check to clear Chloe's debt. My mother hadn't even looked up from Chloe's custom photo album. Everyone just told me, "Sophie, you really are the good daughter." I wasn't the good daughter anymore. Beside my hospital bed, I asked Lisa to call Ethan again. "Bring all the paperwork. I need you immediately." The words came out like a breath, not a single hesitation. "I'm done being their puppet," I told Lisa, my voice steady with defiance. I had spent 40 years carrying the family's burdens. Enough. When Ethan arrived, his dark suit clashing with the sterile white lights, I barely glanced at him. "You know what to do, don't you?" "I know," he replied, his voice lower than usual. "But are you sure?" I glanced at the heart monitor, the rhythm steady, as if nothing had happened. "I've been sure since the moment my mother left me here for a botched office design." "They've taken everything from me," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Ethan said nothing more. He simply opened his briefcase, arranging stacks of papers neatly on the table beside my hospital bed. Wills, bank documents, the deed to the California beach house, the place my family spent every summer like some ritual to flaunt their status to their wealthy friends. I glanced over each page, signing my name without the slightest tremor. Every stroke of the pen felt like cutting through invisible chains that had bound me. "This is my revenge," I whispered as I signed, my heart pounding with purpose. Ethan nodded after gathering. "The house will be listed for sale today. All accounts tied to your family have been frozen. They'll receive the notifications by the end of the day." My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Chloe picked the design color, dark teal. "Crisis over. How are you feeling, Sophie?" "You don't get to pretend you care," I muttered, my anger flaring. He handed the phone to Ethan. "Take a look." He read it, letting out a long sigh. "Unbelievable." I smirked. Watch what I do next. I opened the family group chat. The messages were still flooded with photos of Chloe posing in front of her freshly designed wall, along with a painfully long caption about her struggle to find her personal identity through the color of her office. My fingers flew across the screen. "Still in ICU after emergency heart surgery. Thanks for asking. Super glad olive won over navy. Totally worth missing your daughter's near-death experience. You've failed me," I added, my words a public indictment. Ethan looked at me, a mix of admiration and worry in his eyes. "You know how they're going to react, right?" I placed the phone face down. "Let them react. They've lived in their bubble long enough. Time to pop it." The phone lit up non-stop after that. Messages from my mother, my father, Chloe. All exactly as I predicted. "Laura, don't make a scene. The doctor says you're stable now. Seriously, why am I getting dragged into this?" "You're embarrassing us," Chloe texted, her desperation palpable. I leaned back into the pillow, staring at the blinding white ceiling. "Keep going, Ethan. We're not done yet." Ethan didn't need much time to complete everything I requested. He was the only person I trusted enough to untangle the knots my family had tied around my neck for 40 years. When the faint morning light seeped through the ICU window, he laid the documents in front of me, each page marked with neon stickers. I looked at him, strangely calm. "Where do we start?" My voice was after a sleepless night. Ethan pulled up a chair beside the bed. "We start with the will. I've drafted a new one. Just needs your signature." I nodded. Each stroke of the pen severed the old veins I had forced myself to keep tied to that family. I crossed out my parents from the list of heirs. Not a hint of hesitation. They're no longer my family, I said coldly, my resolve unshakable. Next are the accounts you've been using to support Chloe financially. I've listed every monthly expense here. They'll be shut down once you sign. I looked at the numbers. Tuition payments, car purchases, credit card bills, even the rent for Chloe's latest apartment. All quietly paid by me in exchange for hollow messages like, "Thanks, sis." I signed without flinching. "Shut it all down." Ethan studied me carefully. "Are you sure this is going to hit them hard?" "Let it hit them," I replied flatly. "I've spent my whole life afraid of disappointing them. Now it's their turn to know what it feels like to be left behind." "They'll hate you for this," Ethan warned, his voice cautious. I turned the window. The city skyline was painted in soft orange hues of dawn. Seattle never sleeps, but I wasn't asleep anymore, not in the way I used to be. Ethan flipped through the files. "Lastly, the San Diego condo. Your family's using it this summer. Want me to list it now?" I gave a faint smile. "What do you think?" "Of course now. They've always assumed it was the family's. Time they learned the difference between ownership and illusion." "They'll lose everything," I said, my voice steady with grim satisfaction. Ethan nodded, his eyes reflecting an unusual sense of empathy. He knew me too well. He had seen me endure, carry the weight, retreat every time I got hurt. What he saw now wasn't the same woman he once knew. My phone buzzed nonstop. My family had surely read my group chat message from last night. I didn't bother to check. I no longer needed to hear their empty excuses or meaningless blame. Ethan stood, gathering the document. "I'll send the official notice to them by the end of the day. Do you want to include a personal message?" I stayed silent for a moment, then shook my head. "No need. The documents will speak for themselves." Ethan packed up his files, glancing over at me, his eyes softening. "Sophie, do you realize you're finally doing the one thing you've avoided your whole life?" I opened my eyes and looked straight at him. "You're wrong. I didn't avoid it. I just wasn't ready. Now I am." "They'll never forgive you," he said softly, testing my resolve. Ethan gave a sad smile. I understood all too well. "All right, I'll do my part. But Sophie, brace yourself for the storm." I didn't respond. I was ready for the storm. This time I would be standing at its eye, no longer swept away. After Ethan left, I allowed myself to lie back on the bed, listening to the clear, steady sound of my own heartbeat in my chest. Excuse for anyone, not to hold anyone up, simply for me. 4 days after surgery, they finally showed up. Oh, my mother entered the hospital room as if she were walking into an upscale brunch in Bellevue. A Chanel scarf wrapped around her neck, holding a lavish bouquet of white flowers, her makeup so perfectly done it dulled the cold ICU lights. My father trailed behind her, his face twisted in discomfort like he was being dragged into a dull business meeting. My mother rushed in, eyes scanning the room, scrunching her nose. "Oh, Sophie, the lighting here is just terrible for your skin. You're causing us so much stress," she snapped, her facade barely hiding her irritation. I let out a dry laugh. "Almost dying tends to have that effect. Mother," my father cleared his throat. "Come now, princess. Let's not talk like that. We're here now, aren't we?" "You're ungrateful," he barked, his patience thin. 4 days later, I repressed. 4 days? But who's counting, right? My mother pretended to arrange the flowers, trying to act casual. Chloe really wanted to come, but she's still dealing with the contractor. The office ceiling was done wrong. She cried all morning. "You should be ashamed for upsetting her," she accused, her voice sharp with blame. I pressed the morphine button, not for the pain, but for patience. "So, where is Chloe?" My father glanced around like she might pop out from behind the curtain. "I'd guess she's posting an Instagram story about—" "Sophie, you know how sensitive Chloe is. She's been beside herself worrying about you." "You're lying," I shot back, my voice cutting through her pretense. I raised an eye. "Really? Funny. I haven't seen that in her messages or voicemails, but I did see lots of ceiling pics, design colors, and her self-discovery journey through crown molding." I turned to face him. My father coughed lightly, avoiding my gaze. "Princess, maybe you're overreacting a little." "You're making this about you," he scolded, his tone dismissive. I couldn't hold back the cold laugh. "Overreacting? I almost died." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but the door swung open. Ethan walked in, his dark gray suit cutting through the stark white room like a sharp blade. He carried a thick folder, his face expressionless. My mother immediately plastered on her fake smile. "Ethan, darling, so lovely to see you. Are you here to check on Sophie? She needs friends like you around." Ethan returned a polite smile. "No, Mrs. Bennet. I'm here today as her attorney." "You've gone too far, Sophie," my mother shrieked, her composure shattered. My mother's face visibly palled. My father leaned forward, his smile faltering. "Attorney? What is this?" I calmly opened the folder Ethan handed me. "The documents I signed 4 days ago, including my new will, removal of both your names from the list of heirs, the freezing of all accounts linked to Chloe, and the paperwork to sell the San Diego condo." "You're destroying our legacy," my father roared, his face red with fury. I paused just long enough to see my mother's face freeze like wax. My father stared blankly. "The house, but this summer we made plans, not my concern anymore." I cut him off, my voice as flat as a frozen lake. My mother clutched her chest, eyes wide. "Sophie, you can't be serious. You're a traitor to this family," she screamed. "Hale, do you think I'm joking?" When my heart stopped beating, and not one of you cared. The door burst open. Chloe stormed in, still in her crisp white silk dress, oversized sunglasses, clutching a latte. "Sophie, I just saw your message. How could you do this? I'm in the middle of a crisis, you know that. You always make everything about yourself." "You're jealous of me?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. I leaned back, watching my sister like I was observing a ridiculous play. "Your crisis is crown molding, Chloe. My crisis was cardiac arrest. I'm pretty sure we're not operating on the same level here." Chloe screamed, her voice a shrill needle stabbing straight into my brain. "You're so selfish. You're stressing everyone out." Ethan calmly stood, pulling more documents from his briefcase. "Miss Bennet, I've also prepared a restraining order, just in case," my mother shouted. "Sophie, stop this. You'll regret it. You'll be alone forever," she threatened, her voice trembling with desperation. Ethan stepped back, no need to raise my voice. "No, Mother, the ones who regret this, it won't be me." The room fell into silence. Only the steady beep of the monitor remained, as solid and unwavering as I was in that moment. After all these years, it finally beat only for me. I thought I was numb to my family's shocks by now. Turns out I had underestimated them. 5 days after signing all the paperwork, I received an anonymous email. The subject line was simply 3 words. "Dad's medical records." I opened it with instinctive caution, but as the first line appeared, I felt like I was being pulled into an icy whirlpool. "James Bennet diagnosed with hereditary cardiac arrhythmia in 1990, ongoing monitoring for biological daughter Chloe Bennet. No records of monitoring for Sophie Bennet." "They let me die," I gasped, my heart pounding with betrayal. I sat frozen, the shock seeped into every bone in my body. I had never known my father had a hereditary heart condition, and they had never once mentioned that I, the daughter they always called the caretaker sister, might also carry that gene and the name Chloe Bennet. They had been monitoring my sister's heart health since she was a child, but not me. My phone slipped from my hand, falling under the hospital bed sheet. They knew. They had known all along. They chose to protect Chloe. They chose to leave me in the dark. Ethan answered on the first ring. "Ethan, I just received something. You need to verify immediately." "They hid this from me," I cried, my voice shaking with rage. I forwarded him the email. A thick, heavy silence stretched across the line before Ethan finally swore under his breath. The first time I had ever heard him do that. "Damn it, Sophie, this is deliberate medical concealment. I'll have my team go through all the records, but from what I'm seeing, they've known about this risk since you were a child." I leaned my head against the cold mattress, staring at the stark white ceiling. But inside me there was only pitch-black emptiness. "Ethan, I want the world to know, all of it. This isn't just about money or me being used like a living ATM. They let me live my whole life as a ticking time bomb without so much as a warning." Ethan exhaled. "I get it. But this is going to be huge, Sophie. Are you ready for that?" I pressed my lips together, my voice firm. "They chose to protect Chloe. Now it's my turn to protect myself." "They'll pay for this," I vowed, my anger fueling my resolve. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I dug up old photos faded medical records I'd been forced to forget. The puzzle pieces started falling into place in the most terrifying way. Why was I always the kid who had to walk to the clinic alone when I had a high fever while Chloe got an ambulance for a stomachache? Why was Chloe always prioritized in health checkups while I was handed off to the family doctor with a dismissive, "Sophie is healthy, no need to worry"? And why every time I asked about family medical history did they just smile and change the subject? I knew why now, as I wasn't their biological child. Ethan's call the next morning confirmed everything. "I have the documents. Sophie, you're the daughter of Elaine Bennett, Margaret's sister. You were legally adopted when you were 2 after Elaine died in a car accident." "They lied about my entire life," I screamed, tears streaming down my face. It felt like my entire past was being stripped bare. I wasn't their child. I was the daughter of a dead woman, and they had kept me out of obligation, or more accurately as a backup plan. They knew. They knew the heart condition wasn't hereditary for me, but they never bothered to tell me because I wasn't important enough to know. Ethan stayed silent for a moment before speaking. "We'll use this. We'll make the medical records public, expose their cover-up, and Sophie, I need you to understand. Once you do this, there's no going back." I closed my eyes, taking a long breath. "Ethan, I never had anything to go back to. They'll regret ever crossing me," I said, my voice cold with determination. That day, I drafted an email to all my company staff, friends, and even old business partners who knew my family. No names, no direct accusations, just the story of a girl who grew up in a family filled with secrets and lies, a girl who almost died because of information that was deliberately kept from her. When I hit send, a wave of coldness and relief washed over me. No more burdens, no more guilt, just the raw, ugly truth that needed to be told. And I knew the real battle had only just begun. I always thought of myself as a private person. I didn't like noise, never needed anyone to know my pain, but this time I understood. Violence only fed people like my family, and I was done living in the gilded cage they had built. I opened my laptop, my fingers gliding across the keyboard with resolve. I wasn't writing as a betrayed daughter. I was writing as someone who had survived a lifetime of manipulation. I didn't name them. Just the story of a girl who paid every bill for parties she was never invited to. A girl raised to be quiet, to sacrifice, to stand in the shadows while others basked in the spotlight. Until the day she almost died and realized she wasn't even part of that family. Only night, the post spread like wildfire. The comments flooded in. Thousands, then hundreds of thousands of people sharing the story. Strangers messaged me about toxic families, decades of silence, invisible scars they carried. The media got involved. I didn't need to name names. They connected the dots themselves. They knew. The Seattle business community knew. Social media groups knew. The Bennett family was stripped bare in front of the high society they once ruled. Chloe panicked. She posted stories denying everything, claiming I was lying, that I was jealous of her success. But her desperate attempts only made her a laughingstock online. "She's a fraud," the comments read, echoing my truth. Ethan sent me an audio recording he'd received from an anonymous source. In it, Chloe was screaming at my parents, demanding they do something. "You're just going to let her do this? You have to stop her. People are looking at me like I'm the villain. Do something," my mother hissed in the recording. "We're trying, Chloe. But Sophie's always been the ungrateful one. She's gone too far this time." "She's ruined us," Chloe wailed, her voice breaking with panic. My father only let out a weak sigh, as if everything that was happening was just an unwanted inconvenience. I listened to the recording in silence. No more anger, just a bitter relief. The evidence they had tried to hide their whole lives was now exposing them all on its own. A few days later, I received a formal complaint from Chloe's lawyer. She accused me of defamation, damaging her reputation and causing her severe emotional distress. Ethan merely scoffed when he glanced at the papers. "They're really desperate now. They're grasping at straws," I said, my voice calm but firm. I nodded. "You know what to do?" Ethan struck back by filing a countersuit, attaching all the evidence of financial fraud Chloe had committed under my name. Unauthorized loans, bank accounts she had secretly accessed, lavish expenses I had been forced to pay. When the court dismissed Chloe's lawsuit, Ethan said bluntly, with no more politeness, "They dug their own grave, Sophie. Now we just need to give them a little push." That same day, a video of Chloe screaming and throwing a cocktail at a journalist during a charity gala in Seattle went viral. Her smudged makeup running down her cheeks became a meme across countless forums. I got a message from Daniel, Chloe's ex-boyfriend. She's completely losing it. If you want, I'm willing to testify about everything I know. I replied with just one simple sentence. Thanks, but she'd write her own downfall. I wouldn't lift a finger. I shut down my laptop, quietly watching the sky outside. The gray clouds rolled over the city, but inside me the storm had passed. What I needed to do, I had done. Now I just wanted peace. To enjoy my own heartbeat, its rhythm no longer theirs, only mine. I left Seattle on an autumn morning as the leaves began to change colors along Pike Street. I didn't look back. Everything that belonged to me was packed neatly into 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to Oregon. Portland welcomed me with golden sunshine and the salty river breeze. This city had no idea who I was, and I didn't need anyone to know. I just needed a space wide enough to breathe without the suffocating weight in my chest that had followed me for so many years. My new apartment was much smaller than the downtown penthouse I used to rent for my parents under the excuse of maintaining the family image. But here, everything was mine. From the simple couch to the window overlooking the river. I'm free at last, I whispered, the words a quiet victory. I hired a professional estate auction company to liquidate everything that remained of the Bennett family's assets. I kept nothing except for an old photo of Aunt Elaine that Ethan had found in the archives. In the picture, she held me, a 2-year-old girl with a tenderness I had never received from the people I called Mom and Dad. The auction went quickly. The San Diego condo sold for well above the asking price. I didn't bother reading the whining texts from my mother or the meaningless threats in Chloe's emails. You've destroyed us, Chloe's final email read, her desperation futile. I blocked all their contact. I had spent my whole life enduring those voices. Not anymore. Ethan advised me to keep a portion of the money for safety, but I had other plans. I used most of the funds to establish the Elaine Bennett Foundation, a charity supporting underprivileged families in screening and treating hereditary heart conditions. I wanted the foundation to be my real legacy. Not cold bank accounts, not glittering condos, but something warm, meaningful, carrying the imprint of the woman who gave me life. At the foundation's opening ceremony, I wore a simple black dress, standing before a small hall speaking to strangers. People I felt closer to than anyone who had ever called me daughter or sister. I told my story, no embellishments, no forced strength, just the truth about a child raised in a house full of fake parties where silence was painted as duty and sacrifice, worn like a toxic badge of honor. They tried to erase me, I said, my voice steady. But I reclaimed my life. I spoke about the importance of early heart health screening, about how neglect and lies could kill a person, not with a knife, but with indifference. When I finished, I saw tears streaming down the faces of people I had never met. But this time, I didn't feel obligated to comfort them. I just felt light, as if I had finally placed a period at the end of my story. Ethan approached me after the event, handing certain me softly. They're begging for forgiveness, he warned, his tone cautious. I looked at the pristine white envelope, my mother's neat handwriting clear on the front. I didn't open it. I tore it up and dropped it in the trash without a hint of hesitation. They don't deserve my mercy, I said, my voice firm with finality. At night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, the river breeze running through my hair, and for the first time, I felt an unfamiliar peace. My phone buzzed. It was Daniel. He sent a photo. Chloe being kicked out of a luxury boutique after yelling at the staff for refusing her return. I laughed. No bitterness left. She's finally learning what not being accepted feels like. She's lost everything, I thought, a faint smile on my lips. I didn't reply to Daniel anymore. My story with them was over. Now I had other stories to write, other people to meet, other heartbreaks to protect. I didn't plan it, but somehow everything seemed to fall into place at just the right time. The month after the launch of the Elaine Bennett Foundation, I received hundreds of emails, not just hollow congratulations. More than that, there were long, tearful letters from people I had never met. They told me about their families, the invisible walls, the quiet wounds, the names they kept buried like shameful secrets. You've given me courage, one letter read, bringing tears to my eyes. I read every word. Each story was like a mirror reflecting me in those past years. I realized I wasn't as alone as I had thought. The idea to start a support group for survivors of toxic families came to me one drizzly night while I was typing a reply to a middle-aged woman in Idaho, someone who had spent 30 years under her mother's subtle control. I hosted a trial chat on Zoom. I gave it a simple title, No Longer Alone. At first, only a handful of people showed up, but the next week it grew to 20, then 50. They came from everywhere. Teachers, lawyers, nurses, retail workers, students, all with one thing in common. They had been suffocated by their own families, forced to sacrifice themselves to keep up the perfect family facade. The first session ended in silence. No one wanted to leave the virtual room. We just sat there looking at each other, breathing. I finally understood what it meant to be quiet and not afraid. I officially founded the support group and named it Reclaim. We met regularly once a month, initially online, then slowly moving into small in-person gatherings in Portland. And there was no curriculum, no preaching. We just stared, just listened. And that alone started to heal old wounds. I met women brave enough to sue their parents for financial abuse, single fathers who admitted to being manipulated by their ex-wives for over a decade, young women who finally said no to parents who used the excuse of family to control them. Each story was a small flame. Together, we became a wildfire. The media began writing about our group. They called us the silent wave, breaking the silence. "You're changing lives, Sophie," a journalist wrote, her words a quiet validation. I didn't care about the labels. What mattered to me was that every day more people escaped the invisible prisons they used to call home. Ethan attended one of our meetings, standing quietly in the corner as an observer. After the session, he walked over to me, his eyes soft as the breeze. "Sophie, I've never seen you shine like this. You're unstoppable now," he added, his voice filled with admiration. I looked at him, tilting my head with a smile. Maybe because this life is finally mine. That night, I wrote a new blog post, but it wasn't to expose anyone, not to unveil any more truths. I wrote it for those still sitting in the dark, too scared to step out. Family isn't a place where you have to shrink yourself, swallow your tears, or wonder if you're enough. Family is where you get to breathe. And if your blood family doesn't let you breathe, you have the right to leave. I hit publish and turned off my phone, not waiting for feedback. Not afraid anymore. Outside, the city lights of Portland shimmered like living veins. I stepped onto the balcony, letting the wind toss my short hair. I had chopped off the long hair my mother always forced me to keep for the sake of femininity. I had also deleted every contact that had ever made me feel small in this world, and that was enough. I didn't look for news about them anymore, but the news still found me. 3 weeks after Reclaim was praised by the media as a quiet awakening wave, an old colleague sent me an article. A photo of Margaret standing in the middle of a shopping mall, hair disheveled, clutching a suitcase being escorted out by security. She screamed at the paparazzi, "You don't understand. I'm Margaret Bennett. My family is..." Her sentence was cut off by camera flashes and mocking laughter. She's fallen so far, I thought, no sympathy left in me. I didn't feel pity, not even anger. I just sat still, watching the image as if I was looking at a stranger in a cheap movie. Margaret used to have it all. Brand ambassador contracts, red carpet events, live streams with tens of thousands of viewers. But now she was left with the ruins she'd built herself. I heard from Ethan that Chloe tried to sue me again, this time accusing me of causing severe emotional distress and disrupting her career opportunities. But the court didn't even bother to hear the case. It was dismissed within 3 days, accompanied by the judge's remark that it was a desperate, baseless attempt. Ethan sent me the court recording. In it, Chloe was screaming, her voice cracking. "He ruined my life. People are calling me a fraud, a parasite. You have to help me." "She's lost everything," Ethan noted, his voice tinged with grim satisfaction. But no one helped Chloe. No one was left. The Bennett family collapsed faster than I expected. My father was forced to resign from the board of directors of 2 tech companies where he had once sat as an honorary member. My mother was removed from the organizing committee of prestigious charity events in Seattle after the stories I shared on my blog were cross-keyed with internal documents provided by her former friends. All the masks they had carefully built over 3 decades shattered in less than 3 months. Friends distanced themselves. The press dug deep into financial secrets, shady relationships I never thought I needed to uncover. But now the community did it for me. They exposed everything my family had tried to hide: mountains of debt, investment fraud, fake charity funds. I didn't have to do anything. They destroyed themselves. I heard my mother had to sell the family's heirloom diamond ring, the one she always declared was the Bennett women's legacy, just to pay rent. And Chloe, she wandered through second-rate events, clinging to old connections no one cared about anymore. The photo of her drunk, mascara running down her face, yelling at staff at a small event in Capitol Hill went viral. The most popular caption from Instagram queen to failure princess. I mused, feeling nothing but closure. Someone messaged me asking how it felt to see them like that. He answered with just one short sentence. I feel nothing. And that was the truth. I didn't feel anything anymore. No satisfaction, no vindication, no pity. Ethan suggested I countersue them for the emotional and financial damages they had caused me over the years. I just shook my head. No need. They're already facing the consequences. They're paying for their sins, I said, my voice calm with certainty. I had chosen my path, a path with no traces of them. I didn't need to go back to pick up the broken pieces they had left behind. The day the Elaine Bennett Foundation reached its milestone of funding its first 100 free heart surgeries, I hosted a small party. No prestigious guests, just the people from Reclaim, those who had dared to step out of the massive shadows of their families. We raised glasses of juice, no alcohol, no fake elegance, and laughed. We live for ourselves now, said a woman in her 50s, her eyes glowing with pure joy. You've given us hope, she added, her voice trembling with gratitude. I smiled, nodding. And that is something they'll never have. They had once labeled me everything: the perfect daughter, the model sister, the obedient heir, and finally, the backup daughter. I had lived my whole life under those names, like a heavy coat forcing me to bow my head. Now, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I no longer recognized any trace of that girl. My hair was shorter, my smile lighter, and my eyes no longer searched for approval from those who never truly saw me as family. The day I officially changed my legal name, erasing the Bennett name entirely, keeping only Sophie Elaine, I stood in front of the Multnomah County Court, paperwork in hand, and Ethan asked if I was sure. More sure than ever, I said. I'm no longer the Bennett heir. I don't need to be anything other than myself. I'm finally whole, I declared, my voice ringing with triumph. My hand signing the papers didn't shake. I walked out of the courthouse with a freedom in my steps I had never known after years of being dragged down by invisible chains. I rented a small studio near the river. On weekends, I drove myself to the mobile clinics funded by the Elaine Foundation, helping provide free screenings for low-income families. I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't a spokesperson. I was just someone sitting next to them, listening to their stories about chest pains they had been afraid of. I taught them how to ask questions, how to demand their rights, how not to stay silent. And every time I left, I felt a little more healed. I no longer kept photos of the Bennett family, nor did I keep gifts from Chloe or my mother. I returned everything that had ever symbolized control, obligation, or emotional debt. I didn't need them anymore. Now, the things I kept were photos with the Reclaim group, notebooks full of scribbles from our meetings, thank you cards from families whose lives were saved thanks to the screening program, and a ring. Aunt Elaine's ring, the one Ethan helped me buy back from a stranger. I wore it as a quiet reminder that I was her daughter and my own. On my 41st birthday, I didn't throw a party. I only invited a few new friends, the old support group, and Camilla, the one who had been by my side from the very beginning. We had dinner outdoors under warm golden string lights. No toasts, no speeches, no flowery words, just soft laughter, gentle shoulder touches, everyday stories from people learning how to live for themselves. You've saved us, Sophie, Camilla said, her eyes shining with gratitude. I stood on the balcony, letting the Oregon breeze run through my hair and the morning light dry out the old dark corners inside me. The river in the distance still roared like the slow, steady breath of someone who had finally learned to live for themselves. I didn't look back. I didn't need to close any doors. The past closed itself quietly, like the things I had chosen to leave behind. Elaine's ring rested in my hand, no longer a symbol of pain, just a beautiful pause in the life story I would now write for myself. Sophie's story is not just a journey of breaking free from a toxic family. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting others, but letting go of the things that once imprisoned us in silence. In real life, some ties that seem like blood can actually be invisible chains. Choosing to step out, live by our own values, and build our own happiness isn't selfish. It's the deepest form of self-love. And sometimes that's what real freedom looks like. "They'll never break me again," I vowed, my heart beating strong in my... What do you think about Sophie's journey? Have you ever faced toxic relationships like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional family stories like this.